What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the German Bear Podcast. And today we got the game preview between the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. It's Packers week, guys. The biggest rival will be coming up now in week 2 already. And the big question surrounding that game is just simply, can the Bears finally beat the Packers again? It's been since 2018 since we last beat the Packers. And I mean, it's just such an exciting game, exciting week, preparing for it. It's the biggest rival that we have. And I mean, it's just absolute hate between two fan bases. Absolutely love it. The intensity will be high. But I mean, hopefully it will be a good game for the Bears. As for today's video, I want to go over my typical 4 quarters. First quarter, talk about the upcoming opponent, the Packers. Then in the second quarter, we will look at the teams and compare them. Third quarter, about keys to victory, how the Bears can maybe potentially upset the Packers. And then the fourth quarter, my predictions for the game. So with that being said, before we want to hop into the first quarter, I want to start off with a quick little injury report. It looks pretty clean for the Bears overall. I mean, Velus Jones Jr. Did not participate on Thursday. Don't have the reports about Friday yet. They will come out today at some point when I make this video, but not out yet at this point. But, I mean, it looks like he would probably be doubtful or at least questionable for the game. He would be a huge boost, but, I mean, I don't want to rush back the rookie who's so talented. As for the other guys on the injury report, Riley Reeve deals with some shoulder injuries, was limited on Wednesday, did participate fully on Thursday, so I think he is good to go. And Kari Blusingame had some personal issues, but I think he will be good to go as well. As for the Packers, it does not look that great for them, honestly. David Bakhtiari, their best offensive lineman, deals with some knee issues, was limited on Wednesday, did not participate on Thursday. It looks like he may be questionable or even doubtful, so this would be a huge win for the Bears in this matchup. I mean, he's a huge part for them. They also miss Jake Hansen, offensive guard. Elton Jenkins, big player for them as well. He's also dealing with a knee issue, limited on Wednesday and Thursday, but it looks like he may actually play, so that's good for them. Also, wide receiver Alan Lazard dealing with some ankle issues, limited on both practices Wednesday and Thursday. He's looking to come back. Also, John Runyon is definitely looking like he's going to be out. He's dealing with a concussion and did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday, so I think he's definitely going to be out. And also, rookie linebacker Quay Walker out of Georgia deals with a shoulder injury, was limited for some time now, but was finally back as a full participant on Wednesday and Thursday, so it looks like he will play as well. So, I mean, overall, the Packers got some big injuries to deal with. Let's see who actually plays on Sunday. Some potential big impact players will miss for them, which is huge for us to just get that goal going of just upsetting them. But, I mean, that's already it for the injury report. And finishing up the injury report, this will bring us to the first quarter, which is the talk about the upcoming opponent. And I mean, what can I say, guys? It's the Green Bay Packers. It's the big rivals of Chicago. And just for a quick overlook, what they did in 2022, how they made up their roster. I mean, overall, stable organization. We know that with Brian Gutekunst as the GM. Made some good decisions in drafts, made some bad decisions, obviously, as well. Just up and down with him. As for the head coach position, Matt LaFleur, pretty good head coach as well. I mean, it's always debatable if Aaron Rodgers has a bigger impact than him or the other way around, but Matt LaFleur still pretty good coach overall. And then they have Joe Barry at DC, very well-known name around the league as well. Pretty much has over 20 years, 30 years of NFL coaching experience, I think. As for the system that they bring with them, West Coast offense on offense, I mean, just typical Packers offense. We know them inside out. As for the defense, we got a 3-4 defense, but with them, as for the defense, they play a pretty strong 3-4 system. As for overall, last season, they went 13-4, won the NFC North, obviously, made it to the divisional round and lost to the San Francisco 49ers, the team we just beat last week. And the last game against the Bears was in week 14 in 2021. The Packers went away with it 45-30 for Green Bay, but I mean, insane first half for Chicago with a lot of ups and downs in there. But I mean, the Bears did hang in there. They were scoring points. They were fighting in that game, and just second half weren't making any adjustments, weren't doing any good stuff, and just lost that game in the second half. But the first 2 quarters looked pretty good, and I mean, with new coaches, with new players, with new energy as well, coming off of a win, I mean, I think the Bears have definitely a shot based off of that alone. But coming to the free agency of the Packers in 2022, they had some huge losses. Obviously, wide receiver Davante Adams was traded to the Raiders. Edge Za'Darius Smith is gone as well, joined the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, big addition for another division rival. Marquez Valdes-Scantling also left the Packers to the Chiefs, and then we got two players as well in Lucas Patrick, offensive lineman, who was a big rotational guy for them, and also Quantum St. Brown. Didn't play a huge role for them, but I still wanted to mention the new Chicago Bear that just caught his first touchdown for the franchise last week. I mean, overall for the losses, wide receiver position suffered from it. Obviously, losing the best wide receiver in the game is a big part of it. Davante Adams played already great with the Raiders in week 1, even though they lost to the Chargers, but great performance by him, and you definitely saw how much of an impact he had on that offense against in week 1 for the Green Bay Packers, because the receivers were just not getting open, or they were getting open at times, but then they just simply dropped. It was just a lot of connection problems with Aaron Rodgers that we saw in week 1. So Davante Adams, obviously huge loss, and they have a good edge rush nonetheless, but Za'Darius Smith, still a quality player that they lost right there. As for their key retentions and additions this offseason, they retained Rasul Douglas, pretty good defensive back for them. They signed from the Bears Pat O'Donnell, old snitch ass. No, just kidding. He was a good player for us, but did he really have to go to Green Bay after all these years with Chicago? But whatever, he's the punter for them now. They also retained Robert Tonyan, tight end, pretty solid player. Got defensive lineman Jerron Reed, really good rotational defensive lineman. Was pretty good with Kansas City. They got a good one in him. And then they also signed as a wide receiver Sammy Watkins, who is just, solid wide receiver, nothing too outstanding. Maybe breaks out in week 1 of a season, but that's it for him. And that already brings us to the draft, because this one was pretty good by the Packers. I have to admit that. Really good additions by them overall. If we look at it, started off first round picks. They had 2 of them, obviously with the Davante Adams trade, and they went Georgia. Full-on Georgia mode, got Quay Walker first, pretty good, talented linebacker. Was a bit high for me, but that's a different story. But the player itself is a pretty good guy. And then they topped that off with a few picks later, Devontae Wyatt, really good interior pass rusher for that pretty sick rotation they have right there on the defensive line. Then they followed that up in round 2 with Christian Watson, one of my players that I absolutely love pre-draft. I would have loved to see him on Chicago, but unfortunately got to the rival, dropped a huge pass in week 1 against the Vikings, but I wouldn't say that impacts his career much at all. The guy has killer speed, great size. He can really develop into a good weapon for the Packers moving forward. Then in round number 3, also a guy I liked a lot, Sean Ryan. They got him as a backup at the moment. He's listed at it, but I think he will actually play for them. I'm not exactly sure if he started for them in week 1. Then they also got Zach Tom in round 4, one of my favorite prospects in the entire draft. I really got a lot of guys I liked a lot in this year's draft. Zach Tom, versatile player, can play tackle, guard, center. He can play everywhere on the offensive line. They listed him as a guard at the moment in their depth chart, but Zach Tom, really underrated pick right there. Really liked what they did with the offensive lineman picks. They also later in round 7 added Rasheed Walker, I think out of Penn State. Good developmental tackle, no starter at all at the moment, but as a developmental guy, he can definitely turn out to be a great player for them in the future, but obviously with some injuries, you never know. Players have to step in. As for round number 5, they added Kingsley Enikberi, pretty good developmental pass rusher right there to develop behind Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary. Really good pick as well. And then they rounded it out with, I forgot to mention another wide receiver, Romeo Doubs. First of all, got him in the 4th round. Didn't see that. Really speedy receiver out of Nevada. Good player for them. Played some good football already in preseason for them especially. And then they finished off the draft with picking nose tackle Jonathan Ford. Got Tariq Carpenter, a safety for them as well, and also another wide receiver in Samori Toure. So lots of draft picks. I think they did a good job adding to the defense that was already a good defense, but they added some developmental talent to just I don't know, fill out the roster if some big contracts are coming up and they don't want to extend these guys. And on the offensive side of the ball, got 3 pretty talented offensive linemen, 2 good wide receivers. They probably are a bit raw, especially Christian Watson playing at North Dakota State, maybe a bit raw with the playing level. He maybe has to adjust for a couple of weeks. That can be a positive thing for the Bears at the moment, but he's definitely got lots of talent. And I mean, overall, I really like the Packers draft. I hate to say it, but they drafted pretty good this season. And with that being said, that already rounds up quarter number 1, looking at the upcoming opponent. And that brings us to quarter number 2, which is the team comparison. And just like last week, guys, with the team comparison, I don't want to compare quarterback to quarterback. I want to compare like running backs and tight ends versus linebackers, wide receivers against defensive backs, just the matchups. It makes more sense to compare then. Like quarterback is not playing against a quarterback. It's more like it makes more sense to compare the position groups that are playing against each other in the game. So with that being said, let's start off with the Bears offense. How do I see the matchup between the running backs and tight ends against the Packers linebackers? It will be David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, and Trestan Ebner, again, the 3 running back punch. And then as for the tight ends, we got probably lots of 3 tight end sets even. We will see a lot of that. 2 tight end sets. We saw that against the 49ers heavily. I mean, Cole Kmet will see a lot of playing time. Ryan Griffin, and maybe even UDFA Jake Tonjes, who played outstanding so far, especially as a blocker. And I mean, I rate this matchup even overall. I think the Green Bay Packers got some really good linebackers. They got Devondre Campbell, who played outstanding for them last season. Was he even All-Pro? I think he was even first-team All-Pro, if I'm not mistaken. They also got, like I've already mentioned, rookie Quay Walker in there. And then they topped it off with Isaiah McDuffie, 6th-round pick in 2021. Like I said, I say even overall. I think the Bears got lots of great talent in the running back position in that running back room. Tight ends are pretty good too, but Devondre Campbell played lights out last season, so just even that out. But I think it's not really if you say for the Packers. I mean, look at David Montgomery, look at Khalil Herbert. It's a great punch. It's a great rotation. I think it evens itself out. As for the next matchup, wide receivers against the defensive backs, we have Darnell Mooney, Equanimous St. Brown, Byron Pringle, maybe Voss Jones Jr. if he plays, Dante Pettis, and Amir Smith-Marset against the Packers defensive backs. And I mean, this one definitely for me goes to the Green Bay Packers. Looking at that defensive back room, Jair Alexander, great lockdown corner for them. Then Eric Stokes really came along later in last year's season, 1st-round pick in 2021. Rasul Douglas just got a 3-year extension, played outstanding for them last season. And then they also got some solid depth with some drafted players in there as well. So I think the defensive backs of the Packers definitely have the upper hand for the cornerbacks alone. And then you add Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos, 2 really good safeties, one of the best safety duos in the league. We have to be honest about that. Like, they're pretty good. They got shredded by Justin Jefferson, but the Bears don't have a Justin Jefferson. I believe in Darnell Mooney, but he's not on the same level. That's something we have to keep in mind as well. And that matchup, like I said, definitely goes to the Green Bay Packers. As for the offensive line, Bears offensive line against the Packers defensive line, also have to give it to the Packers. The Bears offensive line has really improved in the second quarter against the 49ers, played some really good, tough football against a really good offensive line. But once again, another week, and we need to play full 4 quarters this time. Like the first 2 quarters, first half did not look great for the Bears offensive line. They got it together in the second half, but this week they're facing just as strong of a defensive line rotation just as the 49ers had. I mean, we're talking about Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary off the edges. Interior guys, we have Jerron Reed, Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry, Devontae Wyatt in that rotation, 1st-round pick, Kingsley Enagbare in there as a rotational pass rusher. I mean, they got talent over talent over talent, and the Packers they can rotate in and out just like the Bears can do on the defense, like they can do as well. But obviously we got D-line against offensive line, and I think definitely the Packers will take this one. I think that's pretty much understandable. As for the last one, the last matchup on offense will be Justin Fields against the Green Bay Packers defense. And this one is maybe surprising to some of you, but I give that to Justin Fields and the Bears because I think Justin Fields is a special player. It is a big moment for him, but he performs in big moments. He showed that in college. He showed that in some games last season as well. This year already too, just coming back into the second half, just shaking off all the rust maybe even as well. Like, he was coming into the game, first regular season game. There's some rust that needs to be shaken off, even though it was preseason as well. You now face better starters. You also have a new offense. But after the first half, where it kind of was a struggle for everybody on the Bears offense, he came back, fought back, and made some special plays happen. And I think he can do that against the Packers as well. He can do that against any opponent. So I have that matchup going to Justin Fields. I think he will really shine in that game. I hope he does. And I'm definitely having him over the Packers defense overall. As for moving on to the defense, we start off with the defensive line of the Bears against the offensive line of the Packers. And this is obviously also dependent on if David Bakhtiari plays, if Elgton Jenkins plays. But I expect them to play. I mean, David Bakhtiari maybe not. I think he will probably be out for the game, but I expect Elgton Jenkins to play, which is a big part for them. But overall, I give this matchup to the Chicago Bears. We got a great defensive line rotation. They showed out against the 49ers. Did not put up a lot of sacks, like only really the true edge rusher or defensive line player that got sacks was Dominique Robinson. But overall, we got a great rotation going in there. Robert Quinn, great pass rusher still at his age. Then we have Travis Gibson, Al-Quadin Muhammad, Dominique Robinson. Interior, we got Angelo Blackson, who's super underrated. We got also Armon Watts, who showed out in the first game as well. So overall, really good rotation for the Bears. They can switch it in and out as much as they want, especially the edges are super loaded for the Bears this season. Absolutely love it. So I have them stronger as the Packers offensive line. It's not a bad offensive line, not at all, but overall I think the Bears have the upper hand in that matchup. As for the Bears linebackers against the Packers running backs and tight ends, it's a even. Probably the strongest position group on offense for them is running backs at the moment, just with straight up Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Really good running backs. Tight ends is a bit weaker, in my opinion. Like, they still got Mercedes Lewis, who's okay, but still getting up there in age. Really getting up there in age, honestly. And then Robert Tonyan, who's okay, but I mean, mostly injured and not that great in my opinion, but whatever. Overall, I think this matchup evens himself out. They got really great running backs, not too great of a tight end group, and overall the Bears linebackers I think are really strong. We got an all-pro linebacker in Roquan Smith who balled out against the 49ers. Like, if you want to watch my film room episode on that, lots of plays where Roquan Smith really shined in my opinion. Also Nicholas Morrow, really good first start for the Bears against the Niners. And also Matt Adams showed out throughout all preseason. Did not do too much against the 49ers, but I think the Bears linebacker room is super underrated. Can do a lot of things, and I think they can definitely stop Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are still super good. They will break up some good runs in there as well, so that's definitely a even for me. As for the defensive backs against the wide receivers, this one definitely goes to the Bears for me right away. I mean, the Packers wide receivers are pretty much unproven or some okay veterans, like in there. Randall Cobb has been solid throughout his career, but he's getting up there in age. Sammy Watkins is a veteran in the league right now, but not too much of an electric player. Allen Lazard will probably be back, but I'm not really high on him. And then you have the rookies, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, who have been okay, but made their rookie mistakes. So, I mean, comparing that to the new Bears secondary, which absolutely balled out against the 49ers, I definitely take them any day of the week. Jalen Johnson is looking like an absolute cornerback one. Kyler Gordon looking really good in there, even though he's making some rookie mistakes, but that's a learning curve for a corner especially. That's okay. Also, Kindle Vildor, not looking too bad out there. And then you have Eddie Jackson, who just bounced back with a great pick last week against the Niners, and Jaquan Brisker, just rookie, playing absolutely lights out. So I'd definitely take the Bears in that matchup. As for the opposing quarterback, in that case Aaron Rodgers against the Bears, I mean, this obviously has to go to the Packers. Aaron Rodgers just destroys the Bears a lot of times. I mean, each and every year it just looks like that. And this year with this wide receiver room, I think the Bears have the highest chances of beating them. But still, Aaron Rodgers will still have a good game against the Bears. It's just in his veins. We can't do much about it. Just hope that he retires anytime soon. But, I mean, this matchup definitely goes to the Packers. And if we count that together, I mean, we got 2 evens, 3 times the Packers, 3 times the Bears. So the matchup for me is by the numbers 3-3. So it might be a even matchup, even though it sounds absolutely crazy to some fans out there maybe. But I mean, the Bears have a shot at winning that. And talking about winning, now we will move on to the third quarter and talk about how the Bears are going to possibly win that game and talk about the keys to victory. And just like last week, I want to give you 2 on offense and 2 on defense. First of all, on offense, I think the biggest thing for me is the trenches. Can they create gaps against a really good defensive line of the Packers? Second half, like I've already mentioned, looked really good, so let's hope they continue that trend. And they also have to limit the mistakes. I mean, against the 49ers, the Bears were holding themselves back with simple small mistakes, especially in the first quarter or the first 2 quarters, and they just need to control the game, get some run gaps open for David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert to then later on open up the play action pass, and I think then we're good to go, but the trenches really have to deliver. As for key number 2 would be Justin Fields. I mean, he needs the game of his life. He needs to have good reads, a fast release, and then make some magic happen out of the pocket. I think he's capable of doing that. He showed it against the 49ers. He showed it a lot last season. The guy's an absolute true baller, so let's hope Justin Fields has a really good game and shows the Green Bay Packers what Bears football is. As for the defense, the 2 keys to victory, first of all, control the run and put Rodgers under pressure. Biggest strength for them is probably running backs, like I've said, and they have a very inexperienced wide receiver room, so stuff the run and pressure Rodgers, make him feel uncomfortable. This is the only way you can probably stop this man from being absolutely hilariously amazing. So let's hope the Bears defense does their job, push the pile, get control of the run game. That would be huge, first of all. And then the second key for me would just be, once again, like last week, the hits principle. I want to see some turnovers. I want to see every player hustle to the ball, just like last week. Looked really good. They got 2 turnovers. Let's continue that trend. And if we do so, we can definitely beat the Packers at Lambeau, which would be such a huge upset. And with that being said, that already wraps up the keys to victory and leads us to quarter number 4, which is my predictions. And I mean, starting off with my scoring prediction, it is probably pretty controversial, but I believe, guys, I believe in the Chicago Bears, and I predict the Bears win 27-20. It might seem like a high score, and it probably is. It might be a bit lower, especially on the Bears side potentially, but I mean, like I said, I believe in it. I believe in the matchups. I think it's an even matchup. The Bears can win this game if they bring their A game. So let's hope everybody, from coaches to players to assistants, do their job and just play their hearts out there to get that victory against the Packers at Lambeau. That would be the big dream. As for my MVP predictions for offense, I have Justin Fields. I think he will have a big magical game performance right there against the Packers on Sunday night. As for the defense, I have Robert Quinn. Quinn may be feasting if David Bakhtiari is not available for the game. He might have an easier matchup, and I have him just dominating that game, getting Rodgers down, pressuring him heavily. I would love that by Robert Quinn, and I think he's really capable of doing that. As for the special teams, Cairo Santos hopefully has a bounce back game after missing 2 PATs last week. 27-20, 27 for the Bears means 3 extra points, 2 field goals scored would be a pretty big performance by the kicker, so let's hope he does that. And with that being said, that already wraps up my predictions and also wraps up the entire video, guys. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what you think the end score will be, and do you think the Bears have an actual chance? Definitely let me know as well. And with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Game Preview. Like and subscribe if you liked the video. Check out Instagram and Twitter if you want to as well. And as always, guys, bear down.